Hey guys, this is Jacob Horst, Trifecta Champion, and you're watching Garage Strength TV. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and click that notification button. Don't miss out on any of our videos. Peace!
Okay, so we got this great question. Because the Super Bowl is coming up, what is my opinion about youth football? Who knows, right? So let me first share that I was a big deal in the football field. No, so I was an all-state football player in high school, but I never played youth football. The first time I ever stepped on a football field was I was in 7th grade, okay? So my whole take on youth football and what we would talk about as far as to define youth football would be anything before even the age of 14. So technically when I was in 7th grade, I was still playing youth football, right? My problem, the overriding issue, especially now that we understand where football is as far as CTE and what concussions can do to people's brains, and recent studies that have been released that have shown that even one season of high school football can leave scar tissue and lesions on the brain. We understand this, right? So my biggest problem becomes around youth football is that there's a serious issue with, one, we're getting kids that can't even comprehend the technical aspects of the sport. They can't comprehend the right footwork. They can't comprehend hand fighting. I mean, there's high school football players that are legit football players that don't even understand how to use their hands, and they always are leading with their head. So if that's at the high school level, we can certainly imagine that this is what's occurring down in 1st grade all the way up through 6th and 7th grade. So to go off of that is that we need to get children to understand the technical aspects, to understand football theory, to understand strategy involved in the game, and I believe you can do that through flag football easily. So that's the biggest step. I would say remove all hitting up until you're even in high school. Now to go off of that is that kids that are in youth or middle school they're all at different ages, they're all are different levels of development, they're all at different sizes, they're all at different strength levels, and you might have someone who, I was fortunate enough when I was in 7th grade that I was a good athlete, right? And I hit puberty when I was in 5th grade. So I was walking around in 7th grade at 160 pounds and I was fast, I was an aggressive kid, I had a lot of anger, and I always wanted to hit people. Now you pair me up with a kid on the same football field that I'm in 7th grade and that's me, and then there's a kid across the line who's 120 pounds, he's not aggressive, he has no comprehension of speed or footwork or anything like that, and we're hitting heads. Why? For what reason? What's the overarching reason to put people's brains, children who are still developing, at risk? So we can think about that, and think about it as this. These are parents that are putting kids and their brains at risk, but they wouldn't sit there and say, oh no, you're in 5th or 6th grade, let's go smoke some weed, or you're in 5th or 6th grade, let's go drink some booze. Like, you wouldn't put your kid at that risk, but we know, based off of science, that CTE causes way more problems to the brain and brain development than something as simple as marijuana. But no one is actually sitting back and saying like, maybe I shouldn't have my kid who's 10 years old smashing another kid who's 10 years old when my kid's a savage and your kid's not. And I'm going to use my own son as an example. My son is 7 years old and he's as strong as 12 and 13-year-old children. If he goes on a football field against another 7-year-old and he's aggressive and he knows how to use his body, he could seriously hurt somebody. So to take a step back, is like youth football should all be about developing technique, understanding strategy of the game, and understanding just basic principles of what football is. If you can spend that time of developing an athlete and developing an individual from the time they're in 1st grade all the way up through 7th and 8th grade, by the time they get to high school and they've all hit puberty around the same time, or they've all hit puberty, and they all are starting to get more muscular development, and as muscular development occurs, their ability to absorb force improves, and when your ability to absorb force improves, the rate of concussions goes down. So that should be the number one goal, is that we sit there and we get these children to the point of being able to absorb forces to prevent brain trauma from occurring. That has to be the number one thing. And to go back, the contradiction around youth football is just mind-boggling, because we'll have parents at my gym ask me, well, isn't this gonna, if they're lifting weights, isn't this gonna hurt their growth plates? Which there's zero science to back up. Zero science to back that up. But then they'll take their kid to McDonald's, and then they'll take their kid to football practice, and they'll smash their heads against each other and think that that's okay, when there's plenty of science that will show what concussions happen, what concussions do to your brain, what they can do to your brain development, and things like that. So at the end of the day, my thought is that you shouldn't be hitting anybody really until you're a freshman. And this isn't a snowflake bullshit argument. This is a science-based argument. And when people say, oh, well, we got to get them to be more aggressive. I didn't play football till I was in 7th grade. I went to school with kids that played football from kindergarten all the way up through middle school. And by the time we got to high school, they were done. They were completely done. Why? Because it was almost like my dad was holding the reins back on me. And by the time I was a freshman, and I started varsity as a freshman, I wanted to just get after it. And that was my aggression taking over. So aggressiveness is not going to be taught through hitting when you're in youth football. Aggressiveness is your character traits. It's what you learn and what you're around. So that argument's false. Youth football is worthless unless you're teaching the actual strategy behind the game and the actual technical aspects of the game. I recommend not playing. Youth football fucking blows. Yeah.